America's healthcare advocate, Carrie Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. My producer behind the camera, Mr. Dave Thiessen, and our producer doing the audio here at Odyssey Studios is Darren Wilhite. This is your show, America. We want to thank you for listening and also watching us on YouTube and the 15 podcast platforms we're on, and making us one of the most listened to talk shows in the country. We are now on 237 affiliates. We want to welcome KYSL, AM and FM, 104.9 in Alexandria, Louisiana. We're on there Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. We're very happy to be on the radio there and want to welcome them to the America's Healthcare Advocate family and thank them for becoming part of our broadcast team here at America's Healthcare Advocate. If you want to follow me on Facebook and Twitter X, you can do that. America's Healthcare Advocate is the Facebook page and the Twitter page. Also, if you are chronologically challenged and you are looking for Medicare insurance and help with Medicare, maybe trying to understand the Medicare alphabet, you can call the good folks over at RPS Benefits by Design, the lovely Carol Lee Steele. We'll be happy to help you. 877-385-2224. Anywhere in the country, it doesn't matter where you are, they'll be happy to help you. And if you're looking for employer-sponsored health care, Maria Allers at RPS Benefits by Design. She is the Chief Operating Officer there, and she will be happy to speak with you as well. By the way, I just got a call from a client yesterday who they wrote a policy for in Pasco, Washington. So when I say anywhere in the country, I mean anywhere in the country. All right, joining me in studio today, and this is a show that I've wanted to do for some time, and it was slightly difficult to get booked, but we got it done. Joining me in studio today is Dr. Courtney Younglove and Alexandria Lee, a nurse practitioner from Heartland Weight Loss. Welcome to the show, both of you. Thank you for finally being able to get this together and come in today. You have busy schedules.
Yes.
If you're wondering why I'm doing this, it's a personal thing to me, and that's why I chose to do this. So I turned 75 in May, and I have been battling weight for about the last 5 years. Okay, I've never had this problem in my life. I work out. I'm kind of a bit of a gym rat. I exercise, et cetera, but I could not get my weight down. I was at like 251 pounds is the most I ever weighed, and I'm pulling my hair out. So initially, I had gone to see my doctor and the first doctor, and she recommended I do Ozempic. She also talked about Wegovy, but she said Ozempic is easier to get, and she wrote me a prescription. So I had a little trepidation about that. So I went and I did some research, and I'm like, I don't think I want to take this stuff. I don't know what the long-term effects of this are going to be. I don't know if this is something I want to do. So then things kind of drifted along, and I went to see my primary care doctor, Dr. Bozarth, and she said, I think I told her that I didn't want to go on either one of the drugs, and she wasn't suggesting that. She said, but I think you need to go talk to these people over at Heartland Weight Loss. I went, yeah, okay, all right, I'll go talk to them, but I don't know about this. Okay, this is going to be a lot of smoke and mirrors. I don't think this is going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go see. So I go for the first appointment, and I meet with the nutritionist Lisa, and then I meet with Alex. Okay. And I come away from this thing, and I'm going, you know what? I think I can do this. I got a plan. I've got some help here. I've got a measurement system. I've got some accountability. It's not radical, all right? And it's working. This morning, I weighed 237 pounds, okay? And we're going to talk about that and how I got to that. And we're also going to talk about things like muscle mass, fat loss, and all the rest of it. But that's why I asked Doctor, and that's why I asked Alex to come on the show. A little bit about them. Alex is a nurse practitioner. She graduated from the University of Kansas Medical Center in 2020. She has completed research projects that entail identifying undiagnosed depression in diabetic patients with chronic wounds. She was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be able to practice obesity medicine at Heartland Weight Loss, where she is able to focus her interest in the field. She is currently working on obtaining her obesity medicine certificate, and she is a great nurse practitioner, I must say. Dr. Younglove is a physician. She is a dual board certified obesity medicine and obstetrics and gynecology. She is only one of about 100 clinicians in the United States that has earned her OMA fellowships in the field of obesity medicine, one of the highest honors bestowed upon clinicians who demonstrate dedication and commitment to the clinical treatment of obesity and obesity-related diseases. Dr. Younglove is the founder and medical director of Heartland Weight Loss Obesity Medicine. She practices at her clinics in Overland Park in Lawrence, Kansas. I go to the one in Overland Park. She was the chief medical officer at Journey's Metabolic Digital Therapeutic Solution for Value-Based Organizations Organization is impacted by current metabolic health crisis. Dr. Younglove is incredibly passionate, and you will find that out today about what she does and about obesity in this country. So let me just start out with something. There is an epidemic of obesity in this country. There's an epidemic of type 2 diabetes in this country. Is that not correct,
Yes,
Doctor?
yes.
Okay, and why is that?
It comes down to lifestyle. It's our food has changed, our movement has changed, our stress levels have changed, our sleep has changed. All of the things that keep us healthy have shifted, and our bodies aren't responding to them well.
Okay, so when you say shifted, is it safe to say that a lot of this behavior related?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Not in an individual responsibility type of way, but the normal behavior, the normal way of living today is very obesogenic. It promotes obesity.
Okay, so talk a little bit about that. Why is that? That I've never heard that term before, obesogenic. So, yeah.
Promoting obesity.
Yeah.
Convenience, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, when we shifted from growing food and making it ourselves to processing it to make it convenient to eat on the go and do all the other things we want to do in life, we changed our food system. We added things, we took away things, we changed what we were eating, how we got it, and it just dramatically changed what was going into our bodies.
And so, Alex, does that relate to when you go to the grocery store now?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Like sometimes, I remember after I first started working, I went to the grocery store and it was like, oh my God, 90% of this is like poison in a way. There's really true, like the outer aisles. It's the produce, it's the cheese, it's the meat, and then you're done. And everything else is always going to be considered a weight positive. Or like a convenience factor, I think, is what most people struggle with. You have 2 working households now, 3 kids. Your education system's still 8 to 3, which really is only supporting like one parent working full time. And a lot of families are relying on convenience.
It's really funny you said that. It made me think of something. So when we have our grandchildren over from time to time, we will have pizza for the grandkids.
Totally.
Okay, all right. So I went to the store, to the Hy-Vee, to buy frozen pizza because I'm tired of ordering this stuff and having it delivered and all the rest. I'm just going to get frozen pizza. I have never seen so many items, different brands of one item. There are like 8 freezer boxes, floor-to-ceiling doors filled with all these different pizzas. I mean, some of them are from Italy. Some of there's Red Baron. I was like, what did we do here to get a pizza?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just pizzas.
Yeah. And
Then you go into these sections of the grocery store for the pre-prepared frozen foods. You see all of this stuff, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Am I right, Doctor?
Mm-hmm. And it's just become very normalized to eat those things.
And you look at the ingredient list, and it's 50 ingredients long, whereas, dough is flour and water and egg. Like
flour, water, and sugar.
Sugar. Some sugar.
We're going to talk a lot about sugar, okay?
Yeah.
But it is remarkable now that I'm paying attention. Okay, that when I go to buy something, like I went to buy yogurt, and I was like, I had to find a specific yogurt that said sugar-free.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I had to read it to make sure it really was sugar-free, and it was sugar-free. Okay, and I'm eating it now, and it's So it is kind of amazing how we've conditioned to this, and that's basically what you're saying.
It's become very normalized.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the normalized is what's going back to what I said in the opening. This normalization of the way we're eating is what's caused this crisis that we're dealing with in obesity, type 2 diabetes in children, all the rest of these issues surround obesity. So we come back from the break, we frame the problem, now we're going to start talking about the solution. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. If you want to learn more about Heartland Weight Loss, go to the website, heartlandweightloss.com. That's heartlandweightloss.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.
The Golden Rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. I'm Steve Keeker, and this is one of the founding principles of my firm, Senior Care Consulting. Since 2002, our value statement has included honor our mother and father, respect our elders, care for those in need, and treat your family as our own. We've been honored to help hundreds of families make one of the most difficult decisions they could ever make, serving them in their greatest time of need. If you're looking for someone who can provide you experienced and objective guidance when searching for a senior care community, reach out today and discover the services of Senior Care Consulting at 913-945-2800, 913-945-2800. Know your options and choose with care at seniorcareconsulting.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. I'm going to remind you, all of these shows are posted up on YouTube. I think we're about 800 and some thousand views on YouTube right now, if I remember correctly. Dave, am I right or wrong about that? I'm right. See, there you go. Once in a while. All right. And we're on 15 podcast platforms. So I don't care if it's Spotify, Amazon, it doesn't really matter. We're on it. Odyssey, iHeartRadio, etc. We're out there on all 15 podcast platforms, and we put these shows up there because people find them interesting and educational. And if you want to tell somebody about this, maybe you've got a spouse, a friend, a loved one that's struggling with this issue like I was with weight, and this is something you might find interesting to listen to. So that's why we put those up there. In studio with me, Dr. Courtney Younglove and Alex Lee. She is a nurse practitioner at Heartland Weight Loss, and Dr. Younglove is the founder and director of Heartland Weight Loss. And we're talking about that issue. We're talking about obesity and people struggling with weight and my little journey with regard to how it's working. If you want to learn more about this, the website is heartlandweightloss.com. You can also call them at 913-620-1616. They're right here in Overland Park off of Metcalf. Great people. It's a great facility, and they do a really wonderful job. So let's just talk about the clinical experience. So you're the one that designed this and put it together. I had a lot of trepidation about doing this going in. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a lot of hocus pocus and smoke and mirrors. And it's anything but that. It's very practical. The people you're talking to, Lisa is great. I call her the thought police because she makes sure you can't have that. You need to do this. But that's important because it sets the parameters. It helps you. So talk about how, when you walk in the door, what this is like and what it means for people and why you think, because that place is always busy when I'm in there. So obviously what you're doing is working. Talk a little bit about why you designed it this way and what it does, doctor.
Well, when I got into the field of obesity medicine in 2014, I realized that most obesity had been addressed in personal circles, in commercial areas, in a very judgmental way. There's a lot of bias and stigma that patients with obesity have dealt with throughout their whole lives, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to treat the disease of obesity in a medical setting with credibility, with respect, with no bias. And so I really crafted that very intentionally to be a place that was relaxing, that was comfortable, that made people feel welcome, and that really addressed the disease under a medical umbrella the way it should be addressed. So I hired people with high credentials, and we really sat back and said, how do we treat this disease from beginning to end, doing it well, very, very thoughtfully. And that kind of guided everything we did from that point forward.
And so that experience, I remember when I first walked into your office, Alex, and I sat down with you, and after about the first 20 minutes, I'm like, this is going to work. You gave me confidence in what I could do. Okay, and it wasn't Weight Watchers or some other cardboard food in a box shipped to your door nonsense with some washed up movie star, whatever the case may be. It was a program, and we'll talk about this in the third segment. But you suggested I go on metformin. I'm like, and then you explain that. So talk a little bit about that, because that taking that fear away for me and making me feel comfortable with what I was going to do had a hell of a lot to do with why I'm like, I can make this work.
Yeah. Well, when you know more, you do better. And so a lot of it for me is an education standpoint. I look at metformin anymore, the more research I do about it, I think it's anti-aging. I think it's neuroprotective. That's not
why I took it.
Not why you took it.
Telling you, okay?
But it also helps modulate insulin really, really well. And insulin, we know, is an energy storage hormone. it's a fleeting hormone, so it can be hard to track. But metformin does a really good job at working behind the scenes and getting you metabolically healthier.
So, but the metformin was not a silver bullet, doctor.
No, there's no silver bullet.
No, okay. So talk about how that's coupled with the rest of the program. When you come through and you sit down, you fill out the paperwork, you go through all those little questionnaires, okay, and you do all of that stuff, and then you go in, you sit down with Lisa, and then you go in and talk to Alex. You've got you're dealing with your nutritionist, okay, and you set up a plan. My plan is I meet twice a month. Okay, because I didn't want it to be once a month. I wanted it to be twice. You can do this any way you want. You can do once a month, twice a month. I think you can do 3 times a month if you want to. But I'm kind of
we suggest at least twice.
Yeah, so I did twice a month, and it's working really well for me. So talk a little bit about that, and how you. So now we've got a nutritionist, we've got a nurse practitioner that can prescribe medication, et cetera, et cetera. That model, if you will.
So. Even though we call ourselves Heartland Weight Loss and we say we practice obesity medicine, what we really practice is metabolic medicine. And metabolic medicine is fixing metabolic health. And the biggest driver of poor metabolic health, which 93% of us suffer from, is insulin. This hormone insulin that rises, and insulin is a fat storage hormone. That's its entire goal, is to get things out of the bloodstream into the fat cells. I mean, that's the primary effect that it has. It's also inflammatory. There's other things that happen. But so if we look at what we're trying to do in the crafting of the design of Heartland Weight Loss, it's an insulin lowering clinic. Everything we're trying to do is lower insulin.
That's it.
That's there's more to it.
No, but that's the simple.
That's the simple. Yep. Get the insulin down and then protect the liver, feed the gut. There's a couple of other things we throw in there. Because you can bring insulin down using artificial sweeteners, but it hurts the liver and it hurts the gut. So we don't really go there. We kind of bring it down to.
Lisa's very clear about you don't do artificial sweet, because I like sweet tea.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, okay, I only buy tea that I used to only buy tea that was sweetened with cane sugar. I never use. So I'm like, well, then can I switch the ones that are using the sweetener? No, you cannot.
You can, but it's not going to help your insulin.
No, so
or your gut.
I didn't do it.
Right.
I figured out a way around it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. So because I've never heard that before. Insulin is a fat storage. Mm-hmm. That's what it does. Mm-hmm. It stores the fat and then it distributes. It stores
things in the fat cells. Yes.
Okay.
It stores energy into fat cells.
And then as you age, for those of us that are chronologically challenged, okay, that becomes harder and harder to get rid of.
Well, when insulin's up, you can't pull energy out of fat cells. It's like a swinging door. When insulin is up, the fat cells are locked. They can only put things in. And so when we're chronically elevating our insulin throughout the day by eating sweets, by eating simple carbohydrates, by eating ultra-processed foods or artificial sweeteners, we can't access that stored fat. So as we need energy, we are driven to go seek it out.
To go get more.
Yes, it's hunger, it's cravings, you name it. You're seeking out energy.
And so that's why you just compound the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if we can lower the insulin, you can access that stored fuel, which is why you can move through the day without having all of those cravings, with all of those hunger signals.
That's
it's
fascinating.
That simple.
Yeah, it is, but I've never heard it described that way. So it's really interesting that you're laying it out like that. Mm-hmm. So we're coming up on the break here, but we come back in this next segment. We're going to go into why the metformin, what the program is, how it works, and how it all comes together. Because there are a lot of pieces to this that they do. It's not something you have to worry about, but it's what they do, and they give you the material, the information to do it. And I think you're going to find this part fascinating, because this is really where the rubber meets the road, if you will, and it all comes together. It works. If you want to learn more about this, heartlandweightloss.com, heartlandweightloss.com. The phone number is 913-620-1616. Stay tuned. We've got a lot more. The doctor's in the house. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIE Radio Network, coast to coast, across the USA. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIE Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Shows are posted up there. There's a ton of information up there. If you have a question, send me an email. You can do it right off the website. Yes, I get a lot of them. Yes, I answer each and every one of them. Not every day, but I answer them. Okay, so if you send me an email, you have a question, a comment, a topic, I'll be happy to get back to you and respond in any way that I can. So once again, americashealthcareadvocate.com. All right, in studio with me, Dr. Courtney Younglove and Alex Lee. She is a nurse practitioner. Both of them are at Heartland Weight Loss. That is the weight loss clinic that I am going to, and I've had some pretty significant success with, and we're talking about that today. If you want to reach out to them, and by the way, if you're dealing with this like I was, you might want to take a look at this because it really is something that works, and it's not a whole bunch of drugs and buying a whole bunch of stuff they try to sell you. It's a totally different approach. It works phenomenally well. The website is heartlandweightloss.com. The phone number 913-620-1616. They've also got a clinic in Lawrence, so either or if you're interested. All right, so let's go, Alex. So I came in, I sat down with you, and let's talk about this process and then how we got to the metformin piece and where I'm at now. Like just start with when you walk in the door and the first thing you do is you go on that scale with the two handles.
The body comp scale.
Okay, that's what it's called.
The body comp scale. So the body comp scale gives us a lot of different data points, and they're data. I mean, nothing's set in stone, but it's data. It gives you your weight. It gives you a BMI. What I really like is that it gives you a % body fat. So people can weigh different weights and have vastly different % body fat, which is why I try to educate patients on. So Carrie, for example, and I don't remember your numbers off the top of my head, but between your first body comp and your second, I told you didn't lose any weight, but you dropped your % body fat by like 4%.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And he gained muscle.
That right there is all she had to say, and I was hooked. Okay.
And so it was done. I mean, he was doing it. The other thing that is helpful that Courtney has crafted is that part of when we present the food to the patients, we present them in a category that's a weight positive food, a weight negative food, or a weight neutral food. And you really took to that, where we could make very practical changes, but if you decide to do X, it's a weight positive moment, and you move on from it.
So you don't call it, you don't say it's a fat moment or
it's just a weight
I'm going to cheat.
moment.
I was told it's not cheat, it's choose.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and you really took to that, and you made small steps. And, I mean, I do think you were a hyper responder. I think you responded very well.
Never been called that, okay?
But it was helpful, and you're completely out of obesity range.
Yeah, so that's fascinating, because the last time I was in, we did the what is it called?
The body comp.
The body comp, and you said to me,
yeah, your body fat percent's below 30.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
There's a chart. This thing prints this out, okay? And she goes through and she marks all of it. And she said, well, I have news for you today. You're out of the obesity care. And I about fell out of the chair. Okay. And of course, the first thing I did when I got back in the truck to head home was I called my daughters. I called my wife. I said, yeah, I believe this. Okay. The fat man is no longer the fat man. So, but it had to do with the other thing that, and I said this to you, and to your credit, was it gave me structure. Mm-hmm. Okay. I spent a significant amount of time in the military. I was a police officer, before I started my own companies, did my own thing. So I'm used to structure, okay? And trying to do this crap on your own,
totally,
whether it's taking, getting which I would never do, the food in a box at your front door because the Osmonds decide, whatever. I mean, to me, that's just like, you must be kidding me, or some of the other nonsense that's out there. And that's kind of a segue to this whole issue with Ozempic and Wegovy. And I'm going to go to you on this. I had great trepidation about even getting into that. And I said to you off air when I came in the studio, I told you that I chose not to do it. And she said that was really smart. Tell me why you said that.
I mean, these are wonderful drugs. They help control hunger, which a lot of people really struggle to implement the changes that are needed to fix their metabolic health. So if you can temper down that hunger and provide patients the space to do the work, beautiful. Mm. Just taking the drug to get rid of hunger and not doing that work, it's not very helpful because you've just put a Band-Aid on the hunger hormones, and the minute you remove the Band-Aid, the hunger hormones are going to come back with a vengeance. I mean, that's physiology. And if you put the damper on the hunger hormones, don't change the eating patterns, you just eat less of the same stuff that you ate before, chances are really good that you're going to lose that muscle mass.
That's interesting.
And that scares me.
Okay, so how important, because you talked about when you did
When I
my,
talked to you, yep.
that my muscle, because I work out 3 times a week and I do a pretty significant work. It's about an hour and a half. So I do a pretty significant workout, but I still lift weights. We have a Pilates reformer that I work out on, and I have a treadmill that I work out on.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this. I mean, I knew, but I didn't know this muscle mass thing, especially as you age, is really important. Talk about why that is.
So muscle stores carbohydrate. So in theory, the more muscle you have, the more places excess carbohydrate can go instead of your liver just shunting it as fat. It's also one of the biggest things of mortality. As we age, we lose muscle. So I always tell patients, if you fall, I want you to get up. I want you to strength train. What happens with sometimes with the GLP-1s that I've been seeing, and I've been very honest with people, is that when you're not strength training, eating enough protein so the muscle can build, right? Sometimes on that body comp, you lose a little bit of lean and a little bit of fat. And I tell people that 1-to-1 ratio, that's what starving looks like. So people may be losing weight, but you're losing you're losing that muscle, which is so protective from a metabolic health standpoint. And so it gives you where on your birthday, you can eat the piece of cake and not see a 5-pound weight gain the next day, you know?
Yeah. So that's critical, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
just the way that Alex explained it, that's how she explained it to me when I came in. And I'm like, oh, the light went on. Duh. Okay, I kind of knew this stuff, but I didn't really have it refined like that.
Yeah, that's the difference between weight loss and obesity medicine. It's really understanding the entire disease and not just focusing on the number going down on the scale. And that's the fear of these drugs being deployed without the guardrails in place.
Oh, I've got, I can't tell you how many friends I've got, both male and female, husband and wife, that are on these drugs and have dropped weight like crazy.
Yeah.
And you will lose lean faster than fat.
Yes, you will. Especially if your insulin's up and you can't access the fat stores.
And this is fascinating because there's a big article in the Wall Street Journal, I don't know, months ago about both these medications. And it was actually written by someone who was on the thing. And the dilemma they had was they'd been on it for a year and they said, now what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So I can't keep taking this forever. What am I going to do now that I've been taking it? And that was kind of the light that went on whenever I was first told to try this. I'm like, yeah, it's a quick fix, but is it really? And there was no explanation like what you just heard Alex do with me, where she talked about fat, she talked about muscle, and all those components. And then the foods that you get, so talk a bit about that, because there's a whole host of lists with the foods and how much you should eat.
So weight negative foods consist of protein, water, vegetables, and you eat as much of this as you would like to your heart's content.
That's right. You can have as much as you want.
Mm-hmm. With a minimum. You have to have a minimum.
Right.
Whole food dietary protein.
That's never a problem for me.
Yeah. No. Weight neutral foods, I always say, are there to help with variety, and they consist of fruit and healthy fats. So even your dairies are a healthy fat, and there's some research that says that they may actually be cardioprotective. And fat's fairly insulin neutral. It doesn't spike. So like for so long we were afraid of fat, and this is what Courtney was talking about, our foods changed. They took the fat out and replaced it with sugar. Oh. So like they took out a fairly insulin neutral substance. It didn't taste very good. It wasn't satiating to anybody, but sugar was. So they replaced it, and now everyone has high insulin.
So this is amazing when you start become cognitively aware of the.
Yes.
I go to the market now and I pick something up like the yogurt, and how many of these things do I have to look at before I find it's in everything?
Mm-hmm. That's very intentional.
Mm-hmm. And branding.
What do you mean by that when you say
powerful.
it's intentional?
Well, it lights your brain up. So it lights up the hormone dopamine, which is your pleasure hormone. And even if you don't taste the sugar, you do get that hormonal rush of this is good. I mean, think about when you look at a breakfast sandwich, 2 pieces of English muffin with some egg and sausage between it versus looking at a plate of eggs and sausage, your brain lights up just with that biscuit or that muffin.
Biscuit's got...
Because it's going to quickly turn to sugar, and your brain knows that. It's very conditioned. But if you add sugar to pasta sauce, you're going to like it better, whether or not you taste the sugar. So then you're going to seek it out again. It's very, very intentional.
It's remarkable, isn't it? If you want to learn more, the website is heartlandweightloss.com, heartlandweightloss.com. These folks really do know what they're doing and what they're talking about, and it can make a difference. The phone number, 913-620-1616, 913-620-1616. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIE Radio Network. Hey, you think this is interesting, fascinating. Maybe you want to tell your husband about it. Maybe he's a couch potato. Maybe you want to tell your daughter about it. Maybe it's your aunt, your grandmother. I don't know, but I'm going to tell you it's worth your time to go to the website, heartlandweightloss.com, heartlandweightloss.com. I'm running this show nationally. Obviously, if you're listening to me in Alexandria, Louisiana, you're not going to run up to Heartland Weight Loss, but I'm hoping this is giving you an educational starting point. And there are facilities like this wherever you live, okay? But you need to make sure this is the kind of facility they are, and they're not somebody trying to sell you 15 products that they're going to make money on trying to tell you you're going to lose weight that way. It needs to be a program like the one we're talking about here, where they take you as an individual and put a plan together that's going to work for you. So let's just kind of segue to that. Size 44 overcoat, as I like to say, doesn't fit everybody. So this is individualized, the way you do this. This is how you design this?
Mm-hmm. I mean, obesity is a disease. Pre-obesity or overweight is a disease. And everyone's approach to that disease and the way their body manages it is different. It requires individualization.
Okay. And so that starts when they come into your facility. You do the evaluation, and then you sit down with Lisa, and then you go sit. So that's another thing. We haven't talked much about that. Let's talk about the side that Lisa does, the nutrition, because that's really interesting to me. She's the one that gave me all the lists. I teased Alex. I called her the thought police because she's the one to. No, you can't do that. But it gives you parameters. Talk a little bit about that part of it. The nutrition is why is that important?
The nutrition is the foundation of all of it. If we don't turn the lever of nutrition, all the other levers that need to be turned are really hard to turn and not nearly as effective. If you can turn the nutrition lever, then we can start turning the medication lever and the sleep lever and the stress lever and the movement levers. Those are all very important, but the base is that nutrition. So we really start with that.
So you've said this a couple of times. We haven't touched on it. Why are you talking about sleep when it comes to weight loss? Just curious.
I mean, there's an absolute correlation between poor sleep and weight gain. It's mostly a cortisol. It's the other hormone that we really focus on. Chronic cortisol elevation, which is your stress hormone, promotes weight gain, especially in the visceral region, their abdomen.
How interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
There was a study that they sleep deprived people for a week, and by the end of the week, they were all insulin resistant. Mm-hmm. So. And then I looked at that and I think back to my own postpartum days. No wonder it was so hard for me. You're not sleeping. You're grabbing whatever, again, the convenience portion of it. And it just kind of reverberates this cycle.
And the further into it you get, the less you're able to break the cycle.
It's a spiral.
It's a spiral.
Okay. And so the process that you've implemented at Heartland takes that into account, along with all the other things that we get into whenever when we come into the program.
It's not enough to just say eat better, move, sleep more, get rid of your stress. A lot of people struggle to implement. I mean, I struggle to implement a lot of those things, right? So that becomes the personalization piece of how do we systematically try to implement those things as best as we can. And some people need medications. Some people need baby steps to get to those things. Some people can dive in and embrace it and move forward. It's very individualized.
Yeah, because you always ask me, this is interesting, I just thought of this. You've asked me multiple times, are you hungry? Are you being hungry?
I always want to make, you shouldn't be hungry. I don't want you to be hungry. I don't want you to go through life hungry. I don't want that for anyone.
Yeah.
And when you're in weight loss, and not getting enough protein, it's very easy to go hungry, and that's not sustainable.
So that gets back to that, and Lisa talked about this, and you talked about it too, was eating the right amount of protein.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Well, so dietary protein, when it hits the small bowel, releases certain hormones, GLP-1 being one of them. That's one of those hormones that's in those new drugs. It creates satiety, a feeling of fullness, cholecystokinin. There's these hormones that feed back that say, okay, you've gotten it. And so many of us, especially women, aren't getting enough protein. They're chronically, truly hungry. And it's very hard to make lifestyle changes when you're hungry.
Or fiber.
Or fiber,
fat.
yeah, fiber's huge.
So it's a combination of the two. So that goes back to, and I've done this, I've done shows and talked about this issue before, and this mostly relates to heart issues that I had Dr. Tracy Stevens on, who's chief cardiologist at St. Luke's, is this whole issue with going into the grocery store and you go around, you do the vegetables, the fruits, you go to the meat counter, the chicken counter, whatever, the fish counter, those are the things, that's where you shop, and then you can go to dairy and do dairy, and if you do those things and stay out of
the middle.
Stay out of the processed foods.
Stay out of the processed foods, because the processed food, you called it poison.
Yeah. I mean, it took my breath away a little bit when I first started working in this field, and I walked into a grocery store and I realized, oh my gosh, like what I didn't know for 32 years. It was just like, I was like, yeah, I can't even describe it. It kind of stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah. And that's coming from somebody that's a nurse practitioner, okay? So, I mean, if you didn't know, how the hell are people like me going to...
Exactly. You're not taught that in school. You're taught caloric deficit, move more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are they serving these kids in school?
Ultra-processed foods. Yes. Yeah. Don't even get me started. I tried to fight that battle.
Yeah.
It's a big battle.
So this is an education thing, and that's why it's so critically important that people understand.
And then it's an implementation thing.
Yeah, you have again, it's having a program that you can connect to and you can make it work, and I think that's what you guys do, and you do it exceptionally well. And I thank you both for coming in today and taking the time to do this. I hope you've learned something from this. I certainly have. That's the reason I did this. The reason I wanted them to come in here and do this show with you, and why we're going to run it coast to coast, is because this is a problem that it's an epidemic in this country. And a lot of people know about it. A lot of people struggle with it. They don't know the answer. Maybe a weight loss drug is something you need to do, but you need to do it under the supervision in a situation like this, where it's somebody that understands obesity. It's a weight loss clinic where they're going to do their best to make sure that you can become the person you want to be. And I will tell you that this has made a big difference for me. It's made a difference in my energy level. It's made a difference in my sleep. It's made a difference overall. And I battled this for a long, long time before I found a solution to it. I'm very happy that I did. If you want information, you're here in the Metro. HeartlandWeightLoss.com, HeartlandWeightLoss.com. The phone number 913-620. 1616, 913-620-1616. And now I leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. Remember, friends, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the very best, you most often get it. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.